In healthcare, there is often too much information and not enough time. Here at the Melanin Initiative, we avoid TMI by breaking things down into language you can understand. We create a safe space for you to ask your questions and share a nursing perspective without taking up too much of your time. Today, we're introducing a topic we haven't yet discussed, but that I've been wanting to do for over a year. And thanks to our special guest today, we'll be able to do just that. We'll be talking to Dr. Shafonya Turner, an anesthesiologist in Maryland. We love to represent the global community, but we have a special interest in bringing attention to providers and resources in the DMV area, also known as the DC, Maryland, and Virginia region. She's agreed to come on for 2 episodes. We're so thankful. She's an anesthesiologist, and she's the founder and owner of Caring for Us, which is a nonprofit health literacy organization whose mission is to improve health outcomes. This includes mortality rates, patient satisfaction, healthcare spending, and morbidity of patients traditionally from underserved communities by encouraging and promoting informed interaction with the healthcare system. It sounds quite familiar, and we love this whole vision. So in her first episode, we'll learn about her journey in medicine as well as creating the organization Caring for Us. In the second episode, we're going to talk about understanding and preparing for sedation and anesthesia. So make sure that you follow, like, and subscribe so when it's posted, you'll be notified. If you're new here, welcome to the Melanin Initiative. My name is Dr. Kimberly Madison. I'm a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner and one of your co-hosts here at the Melanin Initiative Podcast, along with Alicia and Geraldine, who send their love in their absence. We're a health literacy podcast. When we say health literacy, we're talking about your ability to obtain information, to understand that information, and then to use it to manage your health and advocate for others. It's our hope that by watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or listening on any of your favorite podcast apps, that you'll be empowered to ask questions, educated on how you can manage your health at home, and empowered to navigate the healthcare system. Our second mission is to elevate the expertise of nurses, to bring awareness to all the different options in the healthcare industry if you want to be part of it, whether you're coming straight out of high school or entering your second, third, or fourth career. We want to give you a point of reference, show you some faces, help you have more understanding of what it is that you want to do. This is your chance to subscribe. Leave a comment or 2. It really helps the algorithm know that this information is important, so that when people like you look for information like this, we'll show up higher in the search results. Remember, this show is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed here are our opinions alone. They are not a representation of any of our affiliations. If you think you might be having a medical emergency, you should seek medical guidance and medical attention from your healthcare provider. If you're having a physical emergency, you should call 911. And if you or someone you know might be having a mental health emergency, you can call 988 or text 741-741. Dr. Turner, welcome to the Melanin Initiative.
Thank you for having me. You guys do all the things that I set out to do with my nonprofit. So yeah, this is a match made in heaven for sure.
Yes, we're so excited to have this new partnership and to be able to direct people to your website and your resources, which we'll learn about shortly. So it couldn't have been better. We're so grateful to have you on the show and to your support, and really just excited to hear your journey. I think people know your title exists, but just like nurses, they don't really know what you do, right? And so not only will it be great for the patient, it will be great for those who are thinking about entering the profession. So before we get into the journey, where are you located and who do you consider family?
I'm currently located in Prince George's County, Maryland. And I've been here, I moved from North Carolina back in 2009, and I kind of made my journey further south. I moved initially into Baltimore, and I'm a Southern girl, so I miss the trees and the grass. So I moved a little further south to Howard County, and then I moved a little further south. So yeah, now I'm in Prince George's County. Who I consider family, my husband, who is in the home with me, and then otherwise my immediate families. My mom and dad. I have a sister in Atlanta who's a lawyer for one of the insurance companies, State Farm Living Mutual, one of them. I just make fun of her whenever we talk about her job. And another sister and a beautiful niece. And then all the wonderful people that extend from there.
Wonderful. And is this your first podcast?
This is my first podcast. I've had some other speaking engagements, and I have some opportunities to speak on some podcasts. But you guys are, you have opened me up today. So thank you for bringing me in.
Well, thank you. We hope this is a positive experience for you and hopefully not your last.
So far, so good.
Yeah, not too long ago, we interviewed, I Ashley. She came and talked to us about medical cannabis, and maybe within 48 hours, she got an invitation to be on a radio show.
Wow. Yes.
But be ready. I tell everyone, be ready.
Exposure. You never know who's watching. So yeah, do the work, ladies. Keep it up.
Well, thank you. So let's learn about your journey. If you can, share your journey into medicine and what inspired you to specialize in anesthesiology.
Sure. I think people get the misconception that like all doctors are really smart. And I think it's safe to say that there's a consistency and persistence in it, but there's those qualities apply to so many other things that people are are kind of experts at, whether it's a sport or some other location. But for me, I start out with that because I wasn't a smart student. I'll say that I didn't start out like this. I was just a brainiac or whatever. When I was about 14, I saw an article in a local newspaper back in North Carolina, and they were talking about an OBGYN. Her name was Constance Battle. She was a black woman. And you kind of know kind of teleologically that there are black doctors. We all watch the Cosby Show, but to have one kind of proximity and someone like being celebrated and kind of articles being written about her, I was like, oh, this is it's an option. But still, I had the preconceived notions about a doctor being like super smart, and that's just not who I was. I was kind of an average student. And I tell people like I didn't read my first whole book until like my senior year of high school. But
Mm,
thank God for that book. It was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, I think. And I don't know why I liked that book, but I just did. And it opened up my interest in reading. Because before then, you were given an assignment, read, To Kill a Mockingbird or, Things Fall Apart, and you read what you have to read to take the quiz. But this book I read and actually liked it. So then that summer after I graduated from high school, I read nonstop. I probably read like 10 books that summer. And that set me up for college, med school, and so on. And so I went to Hampton University and I majored in biology. And I did relatively well. I will say that I had the grace of having a good high school, even though I wasn't aware of the blessing that I had with that high school. But then when I went and you get to be with amongst your peers, you really do see how experience lends to outcomes. And so that's one of the things that when I mentor and talk to young kids, I'm like, go and see and talk to other people in other places and see how they learn and how they did things. So, you can just see you're not as, like for me, I realized I wasn't as slow as I thought I was. And so, that was the Hampton was great. And, I'm at HBCU and, everybody there is just beautiful and capable. And it added to the confidence that I probably didn't have coming out of the South in a public school system. So I'm grateful for that too. So many wonderful blessings along the way. I wanted to go into medicine, but I still didn't think I was smart enough. And I was, it was kind of like, sure, I'll try this, but my plan was just to go and be a high school science teacher and maybe college if I got along the way. But I met a man named Larry Keith, and he was the director of a program at UNC Chapel Hill School of Medicine called MED, Medical Education Development. And since that program was developed, there have been multiple kind of sister programs created at other schools. But it's basically a mini med school for kids who were just didn't get the same opportunity. So underrepresented, underprivileged students who wanted to go into medicine or dental care as well. And so he came and spoke at Hampton about this program that he had. And some of my friends were going to go. I didn't even really know about it. And I was like, sure, I'll hang out with you guys tonight. And that was a pivotal moment. Like I think we all have those times in life when you're like, oh, that changed my life. That moment changed my life. That meeting changed my life. And I met Mr. Keith and talked with him, and he said, just apply. We'll get you in there. And the summer before my senior year in college, I did the MED program. I did well in the program. It's a 10-week program. It's kind of like mini med school. So you take medical school classes. Of course, they're shorter. And we had even like anatomy lab where we were dissecting cadavers. So I really got some exposure that I never would have otherwise. And I did well in that program, and so that helped with kind of making them an advocate for me to get into medical school. And so, senior year of college, that's when you apply to medical school. And again, my confidence was, I wasn't going to do it. And my mom was like, just send it in. Let's see what happens. I'll pay for it. The expense of applying to all these schools, as you know, can be, it can get up there. You know, the more schools you apply to, you got to go to interviews. And she said, just do it and let's see. And I applied and I got in. I got into my first choice. What was my first choice? I think I probably tried to do something silly like Yale or something as my first choice. But I mean, let me just see. But I got into UNC. So I went back home to Chapel Hill, and that's how medical school happened. As far as anesthesia specifically, I went into medical school thinking I was going to be an OBGYN because Dr. Battle. And, I thought about, being in an office all day and getting to wear pretty suits and, making people happy with delivering their babies. And my experience in the clinical setting, specifically with my training, because in medical school you have to do clinicals, and I did not enjoy that rotation. I picked it as my first rotation, third year of medical school, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the personalities. It didn't ring any bells in me or make me excited. So, but I was in the operating room, because we do hysterectomies and we do C-sections and all these things. And so, while we're getting ready to cut the patient, there's this person sitting on the other side behind a curtain. And I'm like, what are you doing over there? And so there's an anesthesiologist or an anesthesia provider. And I just started chatting with one person in particular, Dr. Freed. And he was a super cool guy, kind of, sarcastic, had a little bit of an attitude, but I loved it. And he would always, he would just, hey, come back here, let me show you what I'm doing. And he planted the seed for anesthesia. And I never looked back. I never looked back. Once I didn't know about anesthesia. And so for the audience that's listening, whether they're already in school, been to school, like healthcare is so big and complex. There's so many parts and so many things you could do. And I'm grateful for that exposure. So expose yourself, whether it's reading or shadowing people, because I would have never all these moments in life. It was just me kind of being a little curious, but I never had a plan necessarily.
Yes, the spirit of curiosity. So much of adulting can kind of quelch that a little bit. So I'm so glad you brought that up as a nice reminder. And sometimes you need space and solitude in order for those creative juices to flow so that you're not being distracted by all these other points of information.
Yeah, and don't be so committed to an outcome or a plan. Like, I went in, I'm going to be an OBGYN, and if I had like said, well, no, I've made the decision, I got to stick with it, then, I would have possibly gone into a career that I hated or just maybe not even finished the journey. So, be okay. It's okay to change your mind. Um, and like you said, give yourself some space, slow down a little bit. If this is going too fast, I'm being forced to make decisions that I want to make, I'm not prepared to make. You can slow down.
Yes, that's wonderful advice. I too was a biology major, and I had that same realization. I stayed the course in a course because I made the decision. I enrolled it. We're here now. But really what I should have done was drop the course and start fresh because I wasn't a strong student at that point. I didn't have a strategy to be successful, and it hurt my GPA. And once that GPA starts going down, it takes so much.
It's like a credit score. Once it's low, you gotta
get it back up. And it's just like, just make the decision to start over. And you feel like, oh, I'm so far in, but really you're not.
Yeah. I tell people always, I'm like, when they ask how long it takes to get finished, I'm like, well, it takes 12 years from after you graduate from high school. I said, but I never really wanted to go to work. It was like, okay, so I graduated from high school, I gotta get a job. Like, no thanks. I'll keep, I gotta go to school and study a little bit, but I don't have to work. Yeah, I'm cool. I'll take that long journey so that on the other end, when I do have to work, at least I'm working in something that I might enjoy.
Yeah, because once you start working, that's it. You're on the wheel.
Taxes. Yeah.
Did you ever meet Dr. Candace Battle?
I never met Dr. Battle. I think my mother did,
Oh, okay.
because I went away to Hampton, and my mother is she actually works in radio, and so she was a DJ for a local radio station back there. And there was something that she was involved in. I think she met her, and she said she was a great lady. I don't, this was a while ago. This was I won't say how old I am, but this was several decades ago. So I don't know what Dr. Battle's doing now.
Mm. We love Hampton. My cousin is graduated from there. My mom went to Howard, so there's that whole real HU battle.
I know I'm down the street. Howard is probably 25 minutes from me. I don't, yeah, we all went to these beautiful schools that do beautiful things. And so, hey, yeah, I'll play along for a little bit. HIU for the folks who really know Hampton Institute University.
Hmm.
But yes.
All love here. You mentioned shadowing, which I think is wonderful. Any tips for students on how to get a good shadow opportunity? Where to start?
I say, I met with a group of high school students last week, and I just told them, I said, hey, do you know your pediatrician's name? And they said no. I said, well, do you have a pediatrician? Because they're in high school, so they should be seen by a pediatric doctor. And they said they had one. I said, well, you should know your doctor's name. That's the first part of health literacy. Is know you they're a person just like you. They provide a service for you. They take care of your body and your life. So know their name. I said, but next time you go in for a visit, ask them if they'd be willing. Do they offer opportunities for you to come and hang out with them for the day, or do they have any colleagues that do that? And you'd be surprised. I tell honestly, doctors like to talk, as you can see. We like to talk. We like to, showcase, and really, we just like to teach. And so there's somebody that your pediatrician knows that will, let you tag along. And then if you're an older person, again, you have a doctor, whether it's your OBGYN or your internal medicine doctor. Just ask them, can I come and hang out with you? University of Maryland has a volunteering program, and so that's how we get in students that aren't necessarily like in health education tracks at this point, but you come in as a volunteer, and then just you go and if you are genuinely interested, and you can kind of pick up on that. You know this, Madison, that there's a person who's trying to perform and look really good, and then there's a person who really wants to learn. And so if you come in with a curious spirit and engage a little bit, you'd be amazed at what people will do. I've seen students, in the help sew patients up after surgery. These are like college students. Like, oh, come over here, put some gloves on. Let me show you how to use this, this needle and thread kind of thing. So just ask.
Yeah, wonderful. I love it. You just have to get yourself in the room.
That's it.
Yep. And be humble about what might get you in the room.
Yeah. I think again, there's this thought that all the people that are there knew how to get there, and they just follow the plan.
Mm.
And I like I said, talk to people, hear their stories. A lot of times people just stumble. You just stumble across a doorstep, and it's like, oh, well, come and sit down. They bring you to the table, and you sit down. That's how life in general, I think, works.
Exactly. And you mentioned a vocabulary word that some of our audience might not be familiar with, a cadaver. Can you just
Oh,
tell us what that is?
a cadaver is a dead body. So people, when you can donate your body to science.
Which I want to do, and I want to dedicate an episode to that. So if anybody's listening and you want to come on and tell me what steps I need to take, let me know.
Hi, I'm Alicia from the Melanin Initiative Podcast. Our mission is twofold. One, to simplify complex health information so you feel empowered to ask questions, educated on how to manage your health, and confident to navigate the healthcare system. And two, to elevate the expertise of nurses, spotlight the diverse career opportunities within the healthcare industry, and inform our peers how to leverage their expertise as clinicians and entrepreneurs. In less than 2 years, we've grown to over 50,000 views and 1,000 downloads, with an international audience spanning the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and more. Our engaged listeners are professionals, entrepreneurs aged 25 to 44 who value authentic, impactful content. Want to connect with this dynamic audience? Advertise with us. Send in your 1-minute video ad and let's amplify your brand. Email tmi.melanin@gmail.com for rates and details. Let's work together.
Well, I think it has to do with your doctor and maybe your driver's license. I don't recall, like when organ donation and stuff like that. You have to make that designation, so there might be something on there. But yeah, so folks, they donate their bodies, or their family can, and so it's a whole human being that they prepare. So they treat them with things that keep them from biodegrading so quickly. And then there's a refrigerator. I remember the building isn't there anymore. It's called Berry Hill Hall at Chapel Hill. But the very top floor, the sixth floor, but that's way up high. Um, and it's windows all around. But in the middle, there's an office, and there's a teacher there, Dr. Montgomery. And he's an old Southern man with the strongest Southern accent, and he was little and short. But he was in charge of like the cadavers, and so for some reason I went to his office one day, and this door behind him was open, and it's the refrigerator, and hanging up like clothes from a like at the what do you call it when you go get your clothes. Oh, I had a brain fart. But anyway, like clothes on a hanger, there are like bodies in bags, like hanging, and he's just sitting in there like talking, maybe playing solitaire on the phone. I'm like, but behind it, it's science for people who like pathology. That's another field that I think a lot of us don't know about. Pathology. You can look at microscopes and help diagnose cancer. You can go and you can work in criminal justice and help with crime scenes and stuff like that. You can do the medical examiner who looks at bodies and does autopsies and things that you hear about on the news. Those are pathologists. Those are medical doctors that they specialize and work in pathology. So yeah, there's something for everybody. There's a pot for every lid.
Yeah, we want to have a medical examiner on, a coroner, someone who owns a funeral home. So reach out to us if you're listening.
Yeah.
And so I did work on a cadaver, and the thing that stands out the most is the smell. That is unforgettable.
The formaldehyde, and then just the parts and what things really, really, really look like. And I mean, it's I don't know. I was never scared in there, but it took some. You have to come to grips with that this is a person, and so a lot of schools should and do have they have services, memorial services for the people who donated their bodies, and so once they're done, they it's almost like kind of a little funeral or whatever, because then they I think they cremate the remains, whatever's left over. But you have to respect this person that lended themselves to you to learn. So yeah, there's so many blessings that come along the way when you are in this journey. Not only again people's bodies, but people's thoughts and minds, people's time, and then the patient is giving themselves to we call it the practice of medicine, right? Because you are never done learning, and so your patient I don't want to say you're practicing on, but you're continually learning about your craft and about the human body. So yeah, I'm grateful for that cadaver. I remember as a man, tall man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wonderful learning opportunity. So what does a typical day look like for an anesthesiologist, if there's a such thing?
Yeah, I mean, like so many other things in medicine, it depends on where you are and what you're doing. For me, I work in a large university center, and so we have about 30 something operating rooms in our purview where I could go. But I walk into the hospital and I get there about my shift. I start at 7, and the day before we have the list of surgeries that are going to happen that day, and so there are assignments made. So I know which operating rooms I'm going to work in. The residents. So I work with learners. So I'm at the University of Maryland. So we have resident anesthesiologists. So there are people who have graduated from medical school, and now after medical school, you go off into your separate fields to learn your skill set. So everybody graduates from medical school, whether MD or DO, and so we all have the same base education. But then you go, are you going to be a neurosurgeon? Are you going to be an orthopedic surgeon? Are you going to be a pathologist? So these are people who want to do anesthesia. So they're learning, and they get their assignment the day before. So they have time to look up the patient, look up the procedure, the patient's medical history, and how that may affect and determine how we're going to do their anesthesia. But for me, I figure it out that morning. I've done it long enough that I can determine what I'm going to do pretty quickly. So I get my operating room assignments, and I do a lot of supervising of anesthesia. So there's just to sidetrack a little bit. There's the doctor of anesthesia. There's nurse anesthetists. There's anesthesia assistants. There's anesthesia resident doctors, and so you go about different paths for getting the certifications, education qualifications. But as the MD, I usually supervise. So there's either a resident or a nurse anesthetist that's actually in the operating room from start to finish with the patient. And I kind of oversee their work. Um, and so I tell the residents, like, you're learning about anesthesia now, but later on, what you're probably going to be doing more of is putting out fires. So, it's like flying a plane. You're going to help them take off. The nurse or the resident is going to stay while you're in cruise control up at 10,000 feet or whatever. And then when it's time to land, you come back in the room and you help them land. So I come in, I meet the patient. I usually have about at most 30 minutes to meet them. And so patients have to, when we talk in our next episode, when you meet this person who's going to put you to sleep and keep you safe, you are giving them a lot of trust in only 30 minutes. And so it behooves you to know as much as you can about you and about this process. And I just tell the people, don't just lend yourself to these people that you really don't know. I mean, we have medical boards and things to make sure we're up to par, but you have this body forever. I have your body for a couple of hours, 10 hours, depending on how long your surgery is. So I get to meet the patient and learn about their history and how it pertains to anesthesia. I tell them about what their plan is, or the plan for anesthesia. This is what I'm going to do to keep you safe and keep you comfortable. And it's in that order. My first obligation to you is to keep you safe. And then I'm going to keep you comfortable. They come very close. I'm not going to, have you, in all kinds of excruciating pain, but because that's not necessarily safe either. And then, answer whatever questions their family might have, and then they have to sign a consent form. And I tell patients that consent form is a legal document. It does not say that if the anesthesiologist does something crazy and they hurt you, that they can't be sued, but it says that, hey, you've agreed to the plan that we discussed. You feel like your questions have been answered. You are comfortable with proceeding as we discussed. So yeah, make sure before you sign it, what you're signing is true. Like, you really do agree to this. You really do understand at some level what's going on, so that everybody in the room can feel safe. Then we roll the patient into the operating room, which has been set up by the resident or the CRNA. So that means that they've drawn their drugs up in the syringes, that they have all the material they need to keep you safe. So all the EKG leads and the blood pressure cuffs and things, they have the breathing tube, that if they're going to put a breathing tube in, that's ready in there. So everything we need it there now. Because if anything emergent happens in anesthesia, we don't have 10, 15 minutes to go wait for somebody to find something. If something happens in the operating room, we got maybe 30 seconds to a minute, depending on what it is. So I can't wait. So have everything there. We're kind of pessimists in that regard. Like, plan for the worst. Always plan for the worst. So we bring the patient in the room. We put all the monitors on. So like I said, EKG stickers, blood pressure cuff, all those things. There's standards of monitoring that every patient gets when they get sedation. And then we go to sleep. And then after that, depending on what the anesthesia plan is, we take care of the patient for the duration of the procedure. When it's all over, 90% of the time we wake the patient up. Sometimes we don't. It depends on this, again, safety. So there's a discussion with the surgeon and that kind of thing. What do we expect post-operatively? So sometimes you have to keep you asleep for a little while. And if that's the case, then you have to go to a ventilator in the recovery room in the ICU. And so the anesthesia provider wheels you to that place, takes you to wherever you're going, and then at that point we hand off your care to someone else. And so we have to give a report to the receiving provider, the nurse who's going to take care of you in the recovery room, or the ICU team that's going to take care of you upstairs. So everyone stops and they listen to the anesthesia provider. Like, this is the surgery they had, this is the anesthesia they had. Did we have to give them blood products? Was their blood pressure hard to manage? So we have to tell the story of how we cared for you for whatever time. And then they agree, they take the patient, and I'm done. I go on to the next patient after that.
You mentioned that for the residents, that the day before they get the patient assignment. And in nursing, we do that. I don't know now, but when I was in nursing school, we had to physically drive to the hospital, physically look up the assignment, and then take it home and work on it. I haven't even thought about that in a long time. I need to ask one of my students how they get their assignments.
EMR probably now, they can probably access it from home.
Yeah, I'd be curious about how much access the student gets. Sometimes that's kind of the limiting part. So the OR, what
Mhm.
are some things that maybe people don't think about when they're thinking about anesthesiology from a clinician perspective? Because when I hear OR, I'm thinking, oh, it's cold, long hours, standing, having a comfortable seat. Do you get to
Mhm.
eat? Do you get to pee? Like those kind of insider.
The insider information. It's cold, except in two spaces. Um, Babies are the pediatric ORs. We keep them warm, just because especially small people have a lot of surface area, but they don't have a lot of fat to keep them warm. And so, if you those folks out who are listening who are actually in training and learn the four ways that you lose heat in the operating room. But one of them has to do with your surface area. So little babies, we keep those operating rooms cold. And then trauma operating rooms I'm sorry, the little baby rooms we keep warm. And the trauma operating rooms we keep warm as well. For a different reason. When you're cold, your blood doesn't coagulate as well. So you don't make blood clots as well. So if a patient comes in with a gunshot wound to the abdomen, to the chest or something, and you have a cold, they're already bleeding, right? So you need to do everything you can to minimize that bleeding, and that includes keeping them warm. But everywhere else is cold. And I tell patients we do that, to keep the patients or to keep the surgeons awake because a nice toasty room, your surgeon will go to sleep. But that's part of it. It's mostly for comfort, but also just to help minimize the risk of microbial growth. Um, so it's not quite refrigerator cold, but it's pretty chilly, probably around 65 to 69 degrees in the operating room on a regular day. So we have jackets that we wear in the operating room. Um, as far as bathroom breaks, yeah, so think of the WWE, like, one person taps in, another person taps out. So I tell patients if you're under anesthesia and sedation with an anesthesia provider, and with a nurse as well too, and I'll speak a little bit on that in a second. But if someone is sedating you, you are never by yourself. We don't it's not a Michael Jackson situation. And I have to use that example because one of the drugs that I use pretty much every day is propofol. It's white. It looks like milk in a syringe. But that's the medication that Michael Jackson received, that ultimately led to his demise. But I say the reason that, as in propofol did exactly what it was supposed to do, but his provider left him. So, and when he left him, because propofol does what it's supposed to do, and one of the things that it will do if you give enough of it is it will stop your breathing. Um, and I do that on purpose. I want you to stop breathing because I need to help put a breathing tube in. If you're breathing and you're coughing, I can't put the breathing tube in. So we intentionally stop you from breathing. But I'm with you the whole time. So as you know, and probably a lot of people here, if you don't breathe, your oxygen levels drop. And that's what happened to Michael Jackson. His oxygen levels dropped. And so yeah, if I have to go pee, I can't leave the patient. So someone has to come in. And usually, there's a rhyme and a reason to it. So there's a person, like I said, there are 38 operating rooms. There's a person that's in charge for the day. The anesthesiologist is in charge, and they kind of oversee the logistics of the operating room. So they know, like, okay, that room. Maybe if I am in the operating room by myself without a resident, someone they will send someone in. Can you get Dr. Turner out for a morning break? Can you go get Dr. Turner out for lunch? Or I just call it, hey, I gotta go pee. Can somebody come and get me out? So they come in, they sit with you, they make sure you're okay, vital signs, oxygen, and then I come back. Um, and then at the end of the day, I do shifts with my career now the way that it's set up. So I get off at 7 at night. But if I'm in a procedure at 7, it's not like they could just say, well, Dr. Turner's leaving, let's stop surgery. Like they got to keep going. So someone comes in and takes over your care for me. Same thing, you give them the report about what's happened, and then they take over your care and they leave. Any other insider things about the operating room? Yeah, we have chairs. We sit down. Sometimes I'll have a blanket wrapped around me if it's really cold. Like the neurosurgery rooms can get really, really cold. Um, we listen to music in the operating room. Usually the surgeon is the one who picks the music. If it's crazy though, I'm just like, I can't listen to that all day. That's ridiculous. Like heavy metal stuff is, that's not drive you crazy. I don't know. But there's some surgeons who want the room quiet, and the operating room is their place. They are the conductor of this operating room, so we lend to them. I'm trying to think. I mean, Every now and then you'll have an article, a book that you're reading, but you're not like engrossed, like you're not hearing the patient. We get really, really good. I have at hearing everything. So I could be reading something on a computer screen or whatever, and I can hear when your heartbeat changes from 62 beats a minute to 64. I can hear the cadence of it change. And so I'll look up. I can hear the surgeon when they call for particular things. I know where they are in the surgery. If they call for a particular type of like suture and the size of it, because they have words for what the size means. When they call for that size suture, I know what they're getting ready to do. Um, I can hear the phone ringing and I can listen to the nurse on the other side talking, to somebody on the phone about something. So yeah, you kind of, I guess, like a mom. I don't know if you're a mom. I'm not a mom, but the mom can hear like all the things that are happening all over the house, even though she's down in the kitchen. It's kind of like that. You get very attuned to your environment. So.
Mhm. I had that experience as a nurse too, right? I'm doing charting, answering a phone, watching a patient climb out the bed, wondering where they're going, and yet I can hear the alarm down there. I can hear this person is
Yeah.
probably having an apneic moment, and someone just walked in the door, and its visiting hours are over. So where are you going? Yeah, and so in a lot of ways, it can be overstimulating. So the further we practice, sometimes we do have to learn how to adapt to that.
Did you go home exhausted a lot?
Hmm?
Did you go home exhausted? Like you're not necessarily running, but because your brain is on, like you are on top tier, like octane, high performance brain all day, and it's exhausting, right?
Yeah, so I used to go home and in the shower, I could still hear those alarms.
Yes. It's an earworm. You can still hear the things.
What's so interesting is you have someone sitting next to you and they don't hear anything going off with their patient. It's like, how did you do that? Because I cannot stop but hear them and wonder why you're not addressing it.
Yeah.
You mentioned peds. Is there a thing as a pediatric anesthesiologist, or you treat everyone?
Yeah, and medicine in general is becoming very specialized now. Um, so it's broken down. There's pediatric anesthesiologist. There's pediatric cardiac anesthesiologist. There's transplant anesthesia. Um, there's cardiac anesthesia, regional anesthesia, trauma anesthesia, critical care medicine. So after you do your 4 years of training in anesthesia, kind of generally, you can go and do specialized training for another year, 2 years, depending on what it is that you want to learn, to learn something very, very specialized. So I don't do cardiac anesthesia. If I had to go in and do, a bypass, cardiac bypass surgery, I could go back and read a couple of my books that I have on my bookshelf to be okay with it, but that's not something I do every day. But I do obstetrical anesthesia. So when you go to have a baby, right, and you need a
Oh, so you
epidural, or you need
your little love, the kind of.
I still got to go there, right? I found a way, Lord. Yeah, so I do that, and so I'm really comfortable and love doing obstetrical anesthesia. I have colleagues that don't want anything to do with labor and delivery. Similarly, I can take care of little babies, but I won't, I will say, take care of anybody less than 2 years old, because I think the patient deserves someone who has the skill set to do that, and the patient and the family, these kids. So there's some things that I just won't do. I do neural anesthesia, but it's not something I do every day. But if we have strokes that come in all the time, patients with brain tumors that need surgery and anesthesia, I could do those and be just fine.
And then you mentioned the charge. So is that something you all rotate through, or once you're charged, you're like, you do that every day?
So at this place, and most places that are really big, so think of Johns Hopkins or um,
GW?
I don't know how many ORs do they have.
I don't know, but you said big, so I'm thinking of some big.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of places that have big operating rooms. So I'm thinking if you have more than like 20, but that number I just threw out. So there's no guidelines for that. But there's relationships that you have to create to do that job, right? Because there's a charge nurse, there's surgeons involved, and there's so many things, and it's complicated because there are lots of moving parts and lots of moving people. So in a place like the University of Maryland, there's a group of people that we call it running charge. So it's about 5 of them, and so each day, because they have to take call and things too, so they may not be there. We have about 5 people that routinely that run charge of the operating rooms. When I'm in private practice, however, and the operating rooms are smaller, or the number of rooms and the the perioperative space are smaller. So maybe at most maybe like 7 operating rooms or something like that. Anybody can probably run charge there. And so, yeah, that's how it just depends on where you're working.
And then we have a series that we call 73 questions, literally 70. And oh my gosh, you know who inspired me to do this series? So at the time he was a med student, but he just started his residency at, I think he's at Yale, in anesthesiology.
Oh, does he have like a really great following on Instagram?
Yeah, NDMD. Yeah, so he, naturally, he had to kind of stop that when he began his residency, and he said anyone could continue it. And so one of the questions of this, one of the 73 questions, is who would not be a good fit for anesthesiology?
I think if you have to be really comfortable thinking and doing it quickly. Like if you're a pontificator and you need, I need to think on this for a little bit. I can't tell you a specific person, but it can be overwhelming depending on I've seen residents just break. You can see them break down and just they stop, they freeze. And sometimes it's momentary depending on kind of what's going on personally for them, mental health wise or whatever. But there can kind of be a monotony to what I do, and it's 90% really like, I won't say boredom, but it's 90% protocol and it's the same thing pretty much every time. But that 10% that's urgent and scary and very acute, it can be overwhelming for people. And the thing is, you don't know when that 10% is going to happen because it can be a very standard. It can be a breast, but let's say we're doing breast implants on a patient or something, and she's healthy. She's 45 years old, no medical history, and she doesn't smoke, and she's normal size or whatever. And then we put her to sleep, and when I go to put the breathing tube in, I can't because something with her anatomy was unexpected, right? Now there's a whole nother, so I'm down this algorithm here. Now I got to go to the next algorithm. And that involves very quick decision making and delegation of tasks and people very, very quickly. Anybody could do it. It's just there are people who are better at doing that and being able to do it well. And I'll say, I don't take any credit for this is God given or whatever, but in crazy moments, there's something that comes over me and I get very still and very calm, and I can shut everything out and do what needs to be done, and then everything kind of turns back on again. I don't know, that's my like X-Man superpower or something, but yeah, for folks who don't do that well, and you kind of sit behind a curtain and you just listen to beats all day for long periods of time sometimes, and people don't like that. You're by yourself. Anesthesiology is a very isolating field to do all day. There's nobody else back there with you. They're sitting back there. If it's an 8-hour surgery, they're by themselves for 8 hours, except for occasionally reaching over, looking over the curtain and talking with the surgeons and the nurses in the room. Some people need a whole team of people. They need a clinic of nurses and patients to see in and out all day. I had a surgery last week that we put her to sleep at 8:30. Her procedure wasn't done until 2:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So 15 hours or more of 16 hours of surgery. So just sitting in that space for a long time by yourself.
Wow. Yeah, lots to consider. So you've given us a really good glimpse of what it's like to be you. And part of that, you've mentioned a few times, is maintaining that spirit of curiosity. And so did some of that have any motivation to starting your own nonprofit?
Yeah, it always baffled me, and I probably need to do some introspection there. Like, how is it someone could come to have a surgery and they really don't even know the surgery they're going to have? And so, I always ask them, I introduce myself. And I say, okay, tell me in your words what procedure you're having today. And they're like, oh, I don't know, something down here in my, like, well, this says that they're going to take out your uterus and your ovaries, and you're going to have a colostomy. There's all these kinds of things. I was like, do you really? And it was just really interesting to me. So I started kind of being a little bit preachy with my patients. Like, you are giving me more charge over your care than you gave yourself. And that's not fair to you, and that's not fair to me. So why do you do that? And so talking to family, talking to friends, even considering myself, it was it is and was a mission to understand why patients we don't engage more in these bodies that we have to live in forever, you know. And that's really what it was. I want to know why and figure out how to get over that why, about why you don't take better care of yourself.
And so you created Caring for Us 2 years ago, right?
Yes, yes, spring of 2020, sometimes at the end of COVID. Um, and it's really, right now it's mostly a website, and then, kind of going out and some speaking opportunities or whatever. But to give very, very baseline information to patients about things that are pretty common. So high blood pressure, diabetes, sleep maintenance, erectile dysfunction, understanding advanced directive, just some basic things that I would think patients should know about, and understanding that when you know a little bit more about something, you engage in it more. So, when we talked before in our brainstorming session, I said most of us go to restaurants now. What do we all do? We Google review and we go to Yelp. So I need to look at the pictures of this. What are they serving? What are people saying about it? I need to see what's happened like in the past. Has anybody reviewed them in the last 2 weeks? Because when you go in there to this new restaurant you've never been to before, you can have an expectation of what your experience is going to be like, the food, the service, and that kind of thing. And you can say like, no, this is what I expected. You didn't deliver this way, whether the food doesn't taste good or the server is, a crappy person, and you can advocate for yourself in that space. It should be absolutely no different, if not more, when you go to see your doctor, or when you go to have a procedure, or when you go to have an imaging study or whatever. Know what is happening or what should happen. What should my pain be like? How long should this take? What's my recovery going to be like? Who do I need to have at home with me when I go home? Do they need to stay with me there all day? Am I going to have to go to a rehab facility? Am I going to be able to go back to work? Is my insurance going to pay for it? That's a big one. We have patients, not often, but they come in the day of surgery, and before you go to surgery, the hospital is going to make sure you can pay for it, unless it's an emergency. And patients will have their procedures canceled the day of surgery because we found out that the insurance company is not going to pay, at least not pay enough to, for the patient to be able to handle the costs. So that sucks for the patient, right? They prepared, they got their family here, they may be taken off of work to get this done, and now like the whole thing just kind of falls apart. So yeah, my moment with the patient is very short, in the clinical aspect of it. But I know that the impact of what I do, and the system that I'm involved in, it affects patients and families so much and for so long.
And I think that's also a key distinction about that, about being an anesthesiologist, that we're pointing out for people who are, thinking about which path to go. I know a lot of nurses will say one reason they chose nursing is because they wanted to have, and there's other specialties in medicine, where you have a longer term relationship with the patient.
Mm-hmm.
Some people like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's good to point out like what you just said about the relationship, but the impact. And so what we try to emphasize on the show is like everyone's coming in here saying they want to help people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can hold the door and help someone. So
Mm-hmm.
what is it specifically about this career, this specialty that you want to do? Because like you mentioned earlier, for students, you can get to the endpoint a lot of different ways. And so we're all helping the patient. It's
Mm-hmm.
just at what point and for how long and how often that occurs.
Yeah.
So Caring for Us, beautiful website, a wealth of information. It's a credible resource. That's what we like to provide here. People, and also things in written context that people can digest on their own, because it's a lot of information, right? I start the show by talking about it's a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And people, a lot of my patients, especially people of color, they love to be able to go home and do the research, right? We talk many times about the history of lack of trust in the system. So people want to go home, they want to be able to look it over for themselves when they're not in a rush, and where they can compare different resources, talk to people that they know. And so we love the fact that we know you exist now. We're going to be including information to your website every episode, because we don't have a website. and I'm not really interested in making one at the moment.
It's work. Yeah.
On there. It's really well done. So we'll put that on there. And I just talked about not trusting the system. And during our brainstorming session, you mentioned that people don't trust the system, but then they also are not taking care of control of their body and their health.
Right. Stay in the hospital. I tell patients all the time, like, have this procedure and get out of here as quickly as you can. Don't stay in the hospital. I don't say it to be, dramatic or anything, but if you took medical mistakes as a cause of death in the United States of America, it's the number 3 cause of death in the United States. And medical mistakes includes a lot of things, bad medication, surgical errors, things like that. But the hospital is not a place for healthy people. I say. You go home and you heal. Have your surgery and you heal at home. If you need something acute to happen, that's the hospital. That's whether it's surgery or it's, interventional radiology or whatever, chemotherapy. But get out of here.
And what will people find when they visit your website? Is it just caringforus.com?
Caringforus.org.
Oh, even better.
It's a nonprofit. So
.gov. Those are our favorite websites.
Yes, it's a nonprofit entity, and so I'm building it slowly. But there is the main section is for health topics. So like I named most of them. So learning about hypertension, sleep disorder, menopause, health advanced care planning and things like that. So living wills and things like that. Most, and I've written it on purpose to be as palatable as possible. So we attempt to write these statements and whatever information we're trying to get you at 8th grade reading level to a 5th grade reading level. So, and it can be hard to do, as we cadaver, like, like dead body. That's so we have to remember to slow down what we're thinking. So any topic that is there, I'm an expert in anesthesia. I think I wrote the high blood pressure one, but everything else, I talked to a professional in that arena. So menopause was directed by Dr. Joelle Ballard, and she's an OBGYN who right now is doing most of her work in menopausal awareness, education, care for women. The advanced directive component was written and helped with Dr. Justin Price. He's a palliative care doctor at the University of Maryland. The sleep study or the sleep disorders information page was written by, of course I had a brain fart, but Tracy. Anyway, everybody's name is there. So if you contribute and if you are a healthcare professional out there who has a specialty in a medical disorder or situation that you really want patients to know about, contact me. And I put their picture up there, their contact information, because like I said, I do anesthesia, and I don't have time to really learn and sit with all these things. And there's something particular about, the person who does deal with menopause and menopausal care and different patients every day to see what are patients missing, what do they really, really need to know, and how do they navigate this process. And only the people who do that routinely can really give that information completely.
That's wonderful. And where do you see your organization going in the next 12 months?
Just continuing to build on the health topics and, spreading the word, getting more traffic online. And eventually I have some plans for, we chatted about them. I don't want to give too much of that away right now just because I want to let it grow organically. How about that? But eventually having a space for patients to kind of come and get, like before you go to your doctor to talk about erectile dysfunction, have someone make sure, hey, doc, ask your doctor this question, ask about this treatment, ask about this risk factor, that kind of thing. So that when patients go in, they kind of have a game plan for how to approach learning about the situation. And then obviously, taking care of whatever the ailment is.
And then we always like to bring up populations that don't sit at our table. Like I always say, every episode, me, Alicia, and Geraldine are 3 straight Black women. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot of other people who maybe we don't consider if they're not in the room. And so we talked about pediatrics. And I'm curious, when it comes to your website, we have a lot of help with these browsers. Like we can translate the information into other languages, right? Mm-hmm. That's an option on your website too. Depending on the browser. I think Google allows you to You can
Maybe I haven't. Yeah,
mention.
I haven't done that before to see what it looks like in Spanish or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no idea.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Spanish. I always like to let people know, if they don't, that Spanish is no longer considered a foreign language because
Hmm.
of how prevalent it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Chapel Hill was definitely. I got good enough at Spanish, especially on labor and delivery, that I could take care of a patient without a translator.
Oh,
Very superficially. But it's not as prevalent here as having like translators in house, which I don't know, that bothers me a bit. But we have basically iPhones or iPads that we can pull translators up and either do a video call with them or what have you. And there are like 50 or something different languages that are available on that. So we're trying to make sure we reach out to everybody.
wonderful. We'd love to hear that. And then you mentioned hypertension. And so I'm on a mission. This whole, the whole, and you mentioned it too about the jargon, the medical jargon.
Mhm.
So when we talk about health literacy, we're not just saying only patients need to know. We need to know it too, especially doctors. You guys spend so long in school taking these exams, proving you know the language, and then we want you to switch and use like layman's terms. Well, it can be done. It has to be intentional, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
even on this platform, sometimes when I watch it back, because I'm talking to my colleague, even I didn't realize, oh, I should have explained that, because I'm so, we're just talking.
We know what we're talking about. Yeah.
And so you mentioned hypertension. I'm on this mission to get us to not use it because I think that it is confusing for the patient. And we see that when they say, oh, I don't feel hyper. They talk about how they're feeling. And then we're so confused because we're like, it's not a feeling, but because that's the term that they're familiar with, they don't even think to ask, well, what does that mean? So I think if we use high blood pressure, I'm thinking that maybe they might say, well, what
Yeah.
is high?
I think on the I know on the website it's high blood pressure. It's not hyper. Like the title of that page is high blood pressure, not hypertension. But yes,
And
or diabetes and the sugar. Yeah, that's that thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
all those things.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts you want to leave with our audience?
I think if you're watching this, and you got all the way through, I don't know how much there's going to be editing. There's going to be. This
None.
is we've been talking for a while. So if you're interested in anesthesia, again, there's a contact me component on the caringforus.org website. If you want to know more about it, if you want to get connected with the anesthesia providers, I have a bunch of my probably most of my friends are actually nurse anesthetists. I don't hang out with a bunch of doctors. But I just hung out with them last night. So a lot of really beautiful women and men, lots of people of color, if you're interested in nurse anesthesia. And there's a newer entity called anesthesia assistants, where you don't have to be a nurse, you don't have to be a doctor. It's very limited in what they can do, but they help provide anesthesia as well. It depends on the state, which states are allowing them to practice. So you can leave medical school. I'm sorry, you can leave high school and then go and do the training for an anesthesia assistant program and not have to go to all the other schooling and incur all the debt. That's one thing we didn't talk about. It's expensive to get these educations. But yeah, that's it. If you're here, you're watching this long, I hope you found something useful to glean. And if I can answer any more questions about the journey, call me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, anesthesia is a popular topic, right? I think there's certain specialties that get a lot of attention. This is one of them. And so I think the time that you took to explain things in detail is going to be really helpful for someone who's new or on the fence.
Yeah.
Like you might have said just one thing. They're like, okay, yeah, that's me. That's a good fit. Or nah, I need to go another direction. So
Yeah.
like I said, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time and talent. We invite you all to subscribe so that when she comes on for her second episode, you will not miss that notification. You can certainly email us your questions and show ideas to tmi.melanin@gmail.com. Remember, when you leave comments, when you share, when you like, you subscribe, it shows the algorithm that this information is important so that when people like you look for topics like this, we show up higher in the search results. At the time of this filming, we release new videos every Sunday at noon Eastern on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Shout out to Angie, our producer. And then we release the audio at 5 a.m. on your favorite podcast app so that our night shift friends can be the first to get something and not the last. And then maybe our day shifters will listen to it on the way to work and maybe someone will play it during huddle and tell us about it. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.